Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode portion of Choice of Rebels Uprising. Continuing to read through this this novel, this fantasy choose your own adventure type situation here, because there are several people clicking on it. Don't know if you're watching it. I hope so. I don't know of a way to reward you with watching it except by continuing to do so, but please do leave a comment or let me know if you would like me to continue, or if you're just finding this video searching for something and then you realize this is not what you're looking for. So just let me know, because it is a little bit taxing to read the whole thing aloud, but I will keep doing it if that's what you want. So the last thing we did was, this was the last screen we were on. Actually, the game didn't save our progress or something, so I had to go back and remake the choices that I made in the last video, but that's okay. So we did that. So let's reread this. Now that you said the unthinkable was extraordinarily hard to stop, you fought to quell the flood of words rising in your throat. Better to take time to think it through before it all came spilling out. Breeden, our watch here is only going to last a morning. Where and how can we meet to talk more on this? And then she tells us where to meet. There's a place. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Since curious, Michael lost the hands to keep the dikes in repair. The whole De Rose north edge is sunk into marsh. No one passes that way. Meet me in the stand of alder between the river pond and the outbuildings. A week from today at the 9th hour, I'll be there, you vowed. Okay, so we are jolted out of our reverie because it's autumn. Both because Ecclesias Zebed is reading piercingly from the Codex of Liturgy, and because you have at last spotted Breeden, halfway between you and the harrowing platform. Breeden's face is half turned towards you, enough that you can glimpse a worried tautness to her lips. So this must be back at that same harrowing that we were at two episodes ago, and we were looking for someone. So Breeden's face is half turned towards you, enough that you can glimpse a worried tautness to her lips. She also seems to be searching for someone else in the throng of helots. You watch her for a few moments, but she doesn't notice you, and eventually the priestly recitation reaches a volume and intensity where you can no longer ignore it. In the 8 years since he displaced Ecclesias Olena, Zebed has proven himself zealous in rooting out sacrilege and lawbreaking in his parish. You've seen blessedly little of him, however, as he almost immediately closed his Hell's Day service to the helotry, and the only helot ceremonies he takes part in are harrowings. Okay, so you've blessedly seen little of him. However, sorry, that was a sentence that was constructed strangely. Today his eyes shine as he concludes his reading from the Codex. For it is the end of all things to praise with the angels of Thanos and magnify the glorious Thaumatarch whom they have chosen. The noble magnify him by their lands and by their wealth. The wise magnify him by their words and by their wards and by their wonders. The helots, or helots, tell me how you want me to say that, magnify him by their toil and by their blood. Thus shall his dominion grow from glory unto glory, that thou may be unmade and all the world rejoice as one hegemony. Charlatan, you whisper at the contemptible little man, too quietly for even your father to hear. Then you catch Breeden's eye at last. She breaks for an instant into a taut, relieved smile. Then it fades as she mouths a name at you. Radmar? I remember. Okay, gotcha. That's why the remember thing. Trust you, Breeden? Radmar growled dangerously. Even seated, the big helot came up to Breeden's chin, and his knotted fist looked large enough to snap her arm without effort. 5 months you've lived in the Rim, and we're supposed to trust your judgment of what's safe or wise? With 12 helots crowded around the decaying shack, the atmosphere was even more stifling and muggy than in the summer-baked marsh outside. Yet Breeden sounded coolly unfazed. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see what risks are worth taking, Rad. You've trusted me so far. He's Caryatoo, damn it. Radmar stabbed an accusing finger at you. The Aristarch's overseers know whenever one of their hands leaves the camp. What happens if he gets followed here? We've never had a Caryatoo helot in here before. You hesitated in the doorway. On your 6 previous visits to the swampy fringes of the De Rose estate, it had been with Breeden alone. Only recently had she confided in you that she'd invited helots from the other Rim Square estates to meet in a place where they could talk freely, and asked if you'd be the first from your camp to join the discussions. Now, surrounded by young helots you recognized but didn't know well enough to trust, you were shaken by the same fear you saw in their faces. Calm yourself, Radmar, you said levelly. I've known how to avoid the overseers since I was 6. There's no gain without some hazard. I crouched in the doorway waiting for them to decide what they wanted. I'll not put you at risk. I turned and left. No. We know how to avoid the overseers. Maybe. A fierce-eyed young woman leaned forward from one stained wall. I've heard of you, Callan Oakfell, always talking free, bending rules. You think the masters aren't watching you, of all people? You felt your temper ignite, just as it did when you had this argument with Gillian and your fellow Kyriatou helots. Maybe they are, and have chosen not to trouble me. But what if they just haven't noticed my talk and my rule bending? What if we watch ourselves more closely than they do? The young helot looked at you up and down, visibly unconvinced. I can think of a third option. Radmar made an approving sound halfway between a grunt and a chuckle. Anger put flint into your voice, but you managed to keep your fist at your sides. Breeden and I have been talking for months. If I were a cryptist, or if she were, for that matter, one of us would be dead by now. They play a long game, everyone knows that. Draw as many fish as possible into the net before hoisting it. You really think that's what the cryptists are for, Ellery? Breeden cut in, eyes ablaze. Look what the thaumatarchy's done to us. They make a few people disappear. Let it be known it was done by a cryptist, and suddenly we're all watching everything we say and do around everyone because anyone could be one of them. But they're not everywhere. Here in the back end of Shayard, you really think we'll be unlucky enough to draw a cryptist? She let the silence stand for several moments, then grinned. I'll bet my life we won't. As Ellery shrugged grudgingly, another much younger girl, perhaps 10 years old, piped up from her perch on a rafter. I'll bet on Callan too, Breeden. My friends on the Kyriatou estate like him well enough, and he's right. Their overseers are easier to fool than a blind dog in pepperweed. A reluctant chuckle broke the tension in the hut, and you recognized Pillion Thatcher, a house drudge with friends in every helot camp in Rim Square. Thanks, Pin. You looked around. Breeden's right. If we don't choose to trust each other, we should just find a corner to cower in until they harrow us all. Maybe so. Alright. Anyone still object to Callan joining us? Breeden asked mildly. When no one spoke, she pressed, and knowing our secrets. Damn it, Breeden, Radmar rumbled unhappily, but left it at that. Alice, come in, Breeden called. You had only just recognized the name when Olin Stonehewer's eldest daughter appeared, eyes flat, cheeks sunken and scratched, a haggard wisp of the girl you'd known. Ellery quickly folded her into a protective hug. You Kyriatou know anything about hiding runaways? Radmar demanded. We know you keep them well out in the woods until you're sure any hunt is done, you replied slowly. It happened once every few seasons. A fugitive helot or two made it out to the rim, fleeing one of the huge estates of the West Riding. This was the first time you'd known a sold helot to run back to their old estate, though. The chances of Alice being recognized made everything more dangerous. You continued. Sometimes there's ways to add them to the camp so no one asks questions, but even with a camp of Kyriatou size, they'll probably get noticed come the next harrowing, and the overseers we have now wouldn't let it go. The last few runners we've just sent on up into the wild to look for the windward outlaws. It went without saying that an 11-year-old couldn't take that road. I reckon some of you will have better luck bringing her into your camp in time. The Tirakatu, the De Morgaine, smaller camps, but friendlier overseers. All depends on how hard she's being hunted, doesn't it? Ellery cut in. Rad, you have any more sense of how much the Pelamatu care about this? No one said a thing, but the overseers have been paying us more surprise visits than usual. Radmar strode over and patted Alice on the head. Don't you worry, Duck. No one outside this room has any idea you're here. He shot a searing glance at you, and no one here's going to spill a word. We'll keep you safe, you promised. Feeling excited at the adventure of protecting a fugitive, worried that Breeden has dragged me into such a risky scheme, harboring runaways will get us sent straight to the harrower, an ache of sympathy at Alice's haunted silence. Angry all over again that a young girl is on the run because of the nobles and the hollow and hopeless. Another one. We'll be angry all over again. That's what it would be for me, I guess. Her father died at an aristocrat's whim, and the rest of the hegemonic authorities were determined to see that she suffered the same fate. At that moment, you'd happily have set them all on fire. So, Breeden continued to the group. Which of us can help Alice in these next weeks? You decided what you were going to contribute. I tried to smuggle food up from my camp. I helped build her a shelter in the woods. One of the overseers is a good man. Tried to find out from him whether Alice was being seriously hunted. I just tried to be kind to her. Our last name is Oakfell, so maybe we're good with our hands. So we're going to help build a shelter in the woods. Over the next few days, you left the fields early and made your way up to the forest behind the DeRodes estate. Alice had been sleeping in a hollow, with just a mound of leaves separating her from the sodden earth and a few pine boughs for shade. Working briskly, you and Ellery Skinner wove for a sturdy willow hut with a floor raised 3 inches off the mud and covered it in thatch and leafy branches. When Radmar finally managed to steal away from the watchful Pelamatu overseers and saw your handiwork, he stood there wearing his typical glower for several moments. You glanced over to a mildly exasperated Ellery. Just as you were about to ask if the hut met with his disapproval, he spoke huskily. I thought I'd be in time to help. He reached out to curl one massive arm around Alice. It's a grand nest for you, isn't it, little duck? Alice bobbed her head wordlessly at his side. Excuse me. Excuse my thirst. It is early in the morning and I need the caffeine. Meanwhile, you kept meeting with Breeden's little gang every 2 or 3 weeks in the DeRose shack, and your conversation soon began to catch fire. Even after the bad death of Olin Stonehewer, many helots were reluctant to complain about their noble masters. Some of the lesser houses were kindly enough to the helotry, after all. So most of the group's verbal rage flowed toward the forces of the Karagon hegemony in Rim Square, the corrupt and brutal Alisters, the heartless Ecclesias Zebed, the bloodthirsty Thurges. As your caution faded, the group began sharing every story of revolt against the Thaumatarch that any of you knew. The case you'd previously heard least about was the yeoman rising of Esther Cable, Sarsifer, the renegade archmage, the Laconiers, keepers of the sovereign bloodline. This one has the least words I can't pronounce, or struggle to pronounce, so we're going to go with the renegade archmage. It's hard to keep from shuddering whenever you hear the name of Sarsifer the... Dang it. Sarsifer the goat. He was the villain in so many childhood fright stories. Sarsifer the flesh-eater, Sarsifer the pallid, slaughtering villages or stealing the blood of children to feed Zao demons. In the tales that ended well a distinct minority, he would be chased away by the brave knights and talisman-wielding magi of the realm, never conclusively slain or defeated. This also makes him one of the few unambiguously successful rebels against the Thaumatarch. Although you'd never heard the story told that way before, he used to be one of the 9... Though you'd never heard that story, the story told that way before. He used to be one of the 9, blind Yebben Skinner recounted, one of the Thaumatarch's deputies, the Enarchs, who hold up the great border wards. After he rebelled 20 years ago, he went his own way, killing only servants of the hegemony, especially other Thurges. That's why they hate him so much, and spread all the stories that make him out to be, excuse me, a monster. But he's not. He's just too powerful for any of them to kill. He's still a goat, Yebben's twin Ellery said with a horrified grimace. I mean, whatever he does to feed his magic, now that he's no longer a proper Thurge, it can't be good, can it? Yebben shrugged. I don't pretend to know good from bad Thurges, sister. All I know is whatever Sarsifer does, it doesn't involve a harrower. Without anyone explicitly saying so, the meeting began to shift from mere talk to action, preparation for a still unspoken future. You shared something of your greatest skill. I think let's do fighting. That's exciting. A man with the last name Oakfell? That's pretty cool. I have to imagine he's probably a fighter. Like most helots, you'd played scrum ball, where 2 opposing mobs use friendly violence to deliver a ball to the far side of a field. The side that takes your tactical advice always triumphs. You'd always been a good hand with a staff, which many helots practice in secret for self-defense. You think any of us would last 5 minutes against a blade? Radmar asked, looking sour after you'd managed to beat him at staves. Against a noble? Absolutely. The aristocrats' games of swordplay and pigmachia, fist-fighting, are hedged in by an elaborate code of conduct. They're used to holding back, to not leaving marks where they can be seen. But you and me, Radmar, we know that the only rule in battle is to win. I think the Thurges know that rule too, Ellery offered bleakly, and we won't be challenging them to a scrumball match, Callan. We won't be challenging them to anything just yet, Breeden cut in. One hedge at a time, El. To your embarrassment, Breeden's friends also soon found out about your greatest area of weakness. So far, I haven't exactly been super charming. One day's topic of discussion was how to convince other people to join your seditious group. You did your best to articulate a convincing case, but could feel the words falling flat from your tongue. The others glanced at each other, visibly unimpressed. You'll just have to win people over by the wisdom in your words, Callan, Ellery said, not without sympathy. Leave the charm and sweet talk to folk like our Breeden. So we're not good at charming people. That makes sense. I can get down with that. As the season turned, your weekly clandestine meetings began to seem routine. Then the day came when you went up to the DeRose hut and found no one there. Scouring the wooded marsh frantically for any sign of Alistair's, you finally spied a familiar silhouette atop an old fence, a few hundred yards from your normal meeting place. Callan, Breeden acknowledged your approach dully. She was staring at the late afternoon reds and oranges in the swamp water. Where is everyone? Lying low, as she craned her neck to regard you, you noticed the tension in her jaw, her hands clenched futilely in her lap. You haven't heard, I take it. The sharp surge of terror hit you like nausea. You had to swallow back bile. Not Alice. They didn't find Alice. No, thank angels. Breeden's voice held no real relief. It's the Pelamatu again. One of their hands, Porrick Weller, was caught with a fistful of mullow. You began to understand the problem, if not Breeden's numb response. Helots were strictly forbidden the herb mullow. It went against your collective duty to maintain your numbers. Who was he eating it with? No one. I don't think Porrick and Rabmar had any need of mullow. Breeden's tone was mirthlessly dry. No, he was bearing it to curious Giordan Pelamatu when they caught him, and the young man didn't want to admit to his mother that he was breaching chastity. So when Porrick let slip his name in the beating, he cried slander. Ah, Thanos. The penalty? Breeden turned hollow eyes on you. They took his tongue. Callan broke half the bones in his body, too. Rabmar is caring for him now, and none of the others will venture out of the camp, especially the women who might be accused of eating mullow with Porrick. That must be some maybe that's a colloquial term for having sex. I don't understand. All right, last one for today. You sat next to Breeden, wordlessly resting one hand on her shoulder. You'd all seen the brutality overwhelm people before. Helots who'd silently watched their families harrowed, who had stoically endured the abuse of Alistairs and nobles. One day something would crack the calluses and reach them. It wasn't always the worst cruelty or the greatest injustice, and there was no telling what lasting damage it would leave. It's got to stop. Breeden kept speaking, thick-tongued and tearful, and I thought I knew how to stop it, but seeing Rabmar's face, she choked, lost her words, began again. Him and all of us. I don't know where they sit between anger and fear. If Rabmar curled up and lost his fire, how many would go with him? If he swore to feed curious Gurden his own lying tongue, or break the neck of the Alistair who caught Porrick, who would run anyway? Seeing Breeden on the verge of despair, you felt an unexpected panic rising in your own chest. Since meeting the fiery young Helot, something had been coming to life in you. Now you realized that the prospect of losing it was unthinkable. As steadily as I could manage, I said, I think I'm falling. No. Took her to my arms and waited for her to kiss me. Golly, he's really trying to force this on us. No. I swore that when she needed me most, I'd be ready. Ready for what, Callan? Breeden pressed, searching your face with her dark, uncertain eyes. Revolt. Yeah, we're gonna revolt. Okay, well, let's actually read this one and then we'll be done. Even as the word left your lips, you were choked by the conviction that the fields were full of listening ears. Your father's voice echoed in your mind. If the Caragons would call it treason, don't say it, don't whisper it, don't even think it. You're never safe. It'll always get back to them. Then a groundswell of anger dissolved your fear, surging up from the same place Breeden had reached with her questions at the crossroads, and you cracked. Arising, an end to the hegemony and their harrowers forever. You truly turned rebel, Callan? Breeden kept staring intently at you. When the moment's right, we can muster enough people to stand against them and live. When we can muster enough people to stand against them and live, then Thurges be damned, I'll be there at your side. Breeden slowly nodded in some semblance of calm returning to her face. I believe it. Thanks, Callan. She rose, smoothing her kirtle. I'll try to muster the group again in 2 weeks, then. when they've all regained some heart, we'll speak more then. Alright. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you made it all the way to the end. If you did, I really appreciate you. Please be sure to leave a comment and let me know if you'd like me to keep going or if you'd like me to move on to something else. Also be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That would make me very happy, and I know that you want to make me very happy. So without further ado, I love you very much. Bye-bye.